What's up guys, welcome to Wasted Space, and we're back in Space Engineers, and we're going to have a look today at something designed for the new exploration mode. Obviously that was released on Christmas Day, Merry Christmas to you all, and that was a pretty impressive Christmas present from Keen. And having had a bit of a look, yeah, there's some work to be done there, but I figured the best way to go about it was to bring a ship and bring a concept that was designed to work in exploration mode once they've finally got all the sort of little crinkles ironed out. So, what we have in front of me here is a take on the Vulture Rapid Deployment Craft, which, if you haven't seen that, is a previous video of mine designed to deploy antenna networks. And as soon as I saw the details of exploration mode coming out, I knew it was going to be something that I could revisit for this purpose, which I've done so with some twists. So what we are currently inside here, and let's go out and have a bit of a look, is my Mallard Deployment Craft. Mallard, because honestly, it looks a little bit like a duck, maybe even the ugly duckling. But still, this one has been geared purely for survival mode exploration. So it is using as few resources as possible, although I did have to still put some glass on it, of course, to make it look cool. And it is fully conveyed up, and everything in here is as you would expect for survival mode. But the deal is a little bit more than that. So if we run inside here, have a look around, as you can see, we have medbay, gravity, batteries, the whole thing is solar powered. There is solar on the top. But let's jump in here and I can show you a little bit about what exactly I designed this to do. So for those of you who are familiar with my Vulture Deployment Craft, you will probably recognise the idea of having something hanging out the back, although this one isn't designed to deploy them when moving. So what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to line ourselves up with an asteroid, and this one down here is the one I picked. So I've already pre-built something behind us to kind of demonstrate something extra at the end, but we're just going to line up with that, just check using the crosshair that we're nicely lined up, and we're going to press 4 to build what this machine builds, which is going to drop out the back here, one of those solar powered antenna jobbies, and it's going to do it using a grinding method, and I'm going to explain why it's grind later. You could have used merge, but trust me, in this case, grind is what you want. Now what we're going to do, now everything's finished, is we're going to drive straight towards that asteroid without touching the mouse at any point whatsoever. So we're just going to go straight down there and line ourselves, well, not line ourselves up, we're just going to drive in a straight line, and it's important that we drive in the straight line for what this is designed to do. Now, obviously it's got an antenna on it, as do we, so if we were travelling a particularly long distance in exploration, in order to find our way home, we'd be dropping these as we went. So we'd just stop any time now, say, and create another one that's going to continue relaying the communications back from the main base. But more importantly is what else it's going to do. So what I'll do now is actually skip to the point at which we're at this asteroid, because even though I know it's one of the closer ones here, it's still going to take a little while to get down there. And then I will come back and show you what this is all about. So we're just now approaching the other end, and all I've done is just held down forward, so let's not get too close to this, let the dampers slow us down, probably get a little bit closer in, and then all we're going to do is repeat the process at this end that we did at the other end. So that looks close enough for now. Don't need to be right on top of it. And as you can see, we're still in range of the base, still in range of the antenna, so I didn't need to stop at any point and build a new one. This is a relatively close asteroid. And we're just going to hit 4 again to drop another one of these out the back. And then once that has done so, we're going to pull forward away from it and set up the next stage of things. So that's now grinding away. And now it's done so, we can pull forward and leave that in position there, relaying communications back. Now, the next stage of things, now we've arrived at our target asteroid, is going to be to look at mining it. So if we jump into this again, we can switch the blueprint in our projector over to the mini miner. Now, this one is going to operate slightly differently, so I'm not going to use the macro to set this one off. I'm going to actually manually build this. And there we go, and we're going to leave it there, and the reason I've done that is because this is battery powered, so we want to leave it attached to the ship for a little bit with these batteries here as they are on semi-auto. So they're currently recharging as we speak, and what I can also do at this point, because I notice I've messed up and forgotten to do so in the blueprint, I can change the ownership of the whole thing over to me so that I can actually remote control it. And the idea here would be you would grind it off like normal, and then you would go into here, you would find the remote control, and you would remote control that tiny little miner and use that to go and mine this asteroid. And that's got a proper antenna on it, and then it's got a conveyor system to enable it to dump ore off once it's done. And instead of waiting around for that, because obviously that's This was kind of an aside I added on at the end, not the real deal. So I could really make that bit a little bit more efficient. Perhaps not necessarily use batteries, perhaps, I don't know, use solar, or either give in and admit you're going to have to use uranium a little bit, but therefore you're going to be only using the small amount that's in your miner. Everything else here will power itself off solar quite happily. But let's jump out here now and imagine that we have completed our cargo run, and this little ship here, which, as you can see, has a connector on it, is dumping its ore into the collectors on this. So as this is survival, as this is creative, let me just jump out of the gravity field there, and let's spawn us a little bit of ore. There we go, grab some ore, and the deal here, if I just get myself in position, you imagine I'm the connector firing ore out from that other craft. It's dropped it out and it's gone in there, and now we're going to follow it because it's going to launch out of here, and let's have our dampers off, and I'm going to go on a little journey with this ore. Because as you probably guessed, what I've set up here is a system by which you can get to your target asteroid, remember how you've got there, and then use that same system to transport the ore you're getting back to base for refining. So you don't need to bring a big ship along with you. Literally, you need the bare minimums. In this case, that ship, I believe, is capable of doing everything you'd need over there. It's got the mining it needs, it's got cargo capacity on it, it's got a medical room to respawn if you need to, and it's got the antenna system that means that it's constantly going to be in contact back with base, and you're going to know where you're going. But at the same time, these things can be used, as long as you only ever travel in straight lines, to relay your ore back again. Now, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to continue recording but speed it up, because what I want you guys to see is that this is one continuous unedited stream, and that I haven't had to do any aiming or anything like that. All I've done is just driven that ship in a straight line and then built one at the other end. And fingers crossed, I believe I've now got this balanced just right so that this will land exactly where I want it to. So there we go, straight in over a distance of about 5,000 meters between us and that asteroid. And the one thing I did forget to do was turn throw out off on these connectors, so they're passing it straight through as if they were a relay in the middle. It would be, however, a very straightforward thing to either make a blueprint of one of these that's got cargo containers instead of the connectors so that it would just collect it at the end, or even set something up on the platform, a bit like I talked about earlier, in order to collect or redirect the ore as it's coming in. So what I'm going to do now is jump across to a different save where I've got things set up so I can show you a little bit about how I put it together. So I'm now in the world where I actually put all this stuff together, and what I have here is basically that ship with a few bits still floating away on me, that ship with the sort of sides cut off so that I can show you what's going on inside. And it's a relatively simple projector system, so couple of welders on the top, couple of welders on the bottom. Everything has been designed to stay away from this, because the biggest issue you're going to come across when doing this is to try and stop this from moving when you release it, because of course for this to be perfectly lined up like you want it to be in order to transfer the ore, because of course that was over about 5,000 meters I fired that ore, so you have to be really precise. In order to stop that from moving around, firstly you need This grinding technique is much better than a merge block. When the merge blocks separate, they naturally push each other apart, and it's in a very inconsistent fashion. So if I turn around, all these random antennas that are floating around are other attempts I've had at it, and there are plenty of these that involve merge blocks. So this design began like this one here, with a merge block on the top there, and the straightforward sort of straight through conveyor tubes at the bottom, and then literally just a few thrusters and a gyro. The only thing on these that really is expensive is the fact that we're using gravity generators, but the grav gens are capable of firing the ore over such a long distance that I think it's potentially worth it. And you could always go back and recover these things once you're done. It's not like they're used up, they're useless once you've projected them. And because you're running this whole thing off solar, I think for the most part it's relatively efficient from that respect. But yeah, I had to do a whole bunch of variants to make sure these things stayed still. So this, for example, was a merge block one where I decided to try and keep it as a single thick layer, because that was going to let the ship drop downwards in a sort of free fashion, so it would drop always the same way. But again, this moves around too much. If I jump in this, these are all functional little things, so jump in. If I weld this up with the merge block on, welds up just fine, but then as I turn off the merge block, we shift, and that movement it ruins it. It means that all your aiming and your accuracy is off. And so there's some kind of two considerations with it, really. Firstly, you've got to be doing the grinder technique. So this is pretty much the design that's sitting in the ship at the moment, although it's painted blue. And this one is pretty much that mining craft that's in there. Really, what I had to do with this was just try and design it so it fit in the same hole. If I had done it the other way around, perhaps the ship would have looked a little bit different. But that's the sort of gist of the drone side of things. The other thing you need to do in order to make sure that this thing doesn't shift very much is understand that as soon as you've put this grinder onto a piston, or onto, in this case, an advanced rotor — I did try the piston technique to begin with, which is why I mentioned pistons — it treats itself as a different part of the ship. So given my ships apparently work when they're cut in half still, if I jump in here and turn on the show center of mass, you'll actually see that we have two centers of mass on this craft, because that is a completely separate ship. So we've got that one there and this one here. And the only reason that this is kind of not shifting around too much is firstly because I've been very careful to try and keep these things as central as possible. I mean, this one I can't affect, obviously. It is a slight downside to the fact that I'm using a 4-block thick layout. But this one I've managed to make sure is absolutely bang on central. And not only that, but it's sort of the ship itself is heavy enough to counterbalance any movement that this might cause. In the original sort of prototype version, which is around here somewhere, this one here, this is sort of how I go about building these projector networks to begin with, is I don't bother trying to convey any of it together. I literally just try around and mess around until I find the most convenient and the most efficient way of laying out the welders, because they seem to really be the crux of the matter and the thing that makes all the difference. But if I jump into this cockpit here, this one doesn't have enough mass yet to counterbalance the fact that it's got two ships in there. So as I move around, when the inertial dampers kick in, the thing twists a little bit. It's hard to see unless we're going at a decent speed, but as it stops, it just twists a tiny amount. If you look at the crosshair, you'll probably be able to see it here. Nah, sadly not. Either way, the end result is it moves enough. Even an imperceptible movement can be enough to prevent this from being accurate over the distances you want. Now, fortunately, this, once you've added in enough weight onto the rest of the ship, doesn't happen with the grinder version. But it will happen with the other variety. The other thing I tried, and this will probably become a newer video, is this is the sort of new survival-ready, exploration-ready projector layout for the Vulture itself. So I'm going to redesign the Vulture into something that's designed just for antennas, and that's going to do the sort of same job. It does also, I initially started with this, building the same sort of idea. So conveyor one end, collector one end, and an ejector the other end. Problem with these, of course, is there's no gravity, and so it's hideously slow. And so the end result was I had to go for the large ship. So yeah, just to finish up, obviously conveyor layout is like this. It's not difficult. All you need to do is, once you've got your welders in place, go and move them around until you can convey them all together. And I've taken a little bit of artistic liberty in doubling up all the conveyor tubes in the middle so that it's still symmetrical. Of course, you don't actually have to do that if you're being really resource conscious. But aside from that, this ship should be relatively easily buildable. You don't need the glass panels. Those were a bit of a show-off side of things. But the solar panels are really handy things to have. And then that's essentially the gist of it. The stuff on the sides is bits I added on just to make it a little bit more sort of survival ready. So hence we've got the med bays and the batteries and things to kind of, I don't know, give you that backup side and make sure that it's truly self-sufficient. Timers themselves, really straightforward. Not surprising. Weld, grind, off. Weld, welder on, start the next one. Grind, weld off, grind on, start the next one. Off, everything's off. Really straightforward. So that's how you'd go about building one. I hope you kind of find the idea interesting. I thought it was actually quite a neat implementation of it, now that it's capable of doing the dual roles of both ore transportation and also the role of keeping you connected and knowing where exactly you are, because trust me, having played a bit of exploration, that's really important. It's so easy to get lost. So thanks a lot for watching, guys. Bit of a long rambly one today, but hey, I'm still a bit excited after Christmas. Hope you all had a really good Christmas. If you enjoyed the video, please hit like, please hit subscribe. As always, really helps the channel out. I'd really appreciate it. And otherwise, let me know what you think of this. Let me know what you're planning for exploration. I'd be really intrigued to see what you've got planned and what you think of it so far, because obviously it's got some issues, but it's still really interesting. So cheers, guys. Thanks for watching, and I will catch you next time.